Debt, 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 and debt. Um, we say no debt is good. We say debt is good. We say good debt is good debt. We say bad debt is bad debt. But funny is that it's all debt. So, and many of us are in that space in life where we are struggling with a debt in one way or the other. It's either you are in a debt that you really cannot account for what you did, used that money for, or you are in a debt that you borrowed thinking that it would actually come and sort a certain issue that it did not manage to sort, or you picked up debt that you did something that was not meaningful. I'm sure we've all done that, those financial mistakes. Been there, done that. I remember at one point taking money, and it's a whole long story if I'm to talk about some of the bad mistakes I have done with debt. But then I do not want us to discuss whether debt is good or bad today, or whether to take up debt or not, or whether debt is the only way to grow financially. But I want us to look at the factors that we will need to consider when we are taking up debt. And this will be important because at one point or the other, we will realize that in life, it is almost impossible in one way or the other to avoid debt. More so when you are at a point where you are growing yourself. So what we will discuss today is, what should I consider? What should I look into? What should I be my bottom lines when I'm looking at taking up debt? And I want to start off by saying that availability of debt is not a call to consumption of debt. Availability of debt is not a call or an invitation to consumption of debt. Many of us are in a place, or you could be in a place where you find yourself in debt simply because debt was available. Not that you really needed that debt, not that it was important for you to go into that debt, but you actually consumed that credit simply because of its availability. I want to say that in this time and age, it almost becomes impossible to avoid an invitation to debt. On your mobile phone, there are all these mobile applications that are actually inviting you to consume debt. Your bank is consistently sending you messages to consume debt. Your phone, when you use your mobile money and you exhaust your cash, the cash that is in your mobile money wallet, actually is now inviting you to an available limit of debt that you can consume. So debt will always be around us, but then we need the discipline to know when, how, and what for to consume debt, which is what we are actually going to discuss today. And we are going to look at about several factors that are very important for you to consider when taking up any debt. The first thing that you need to consider is that you must take up debt that has a specific plan or purpose that is coming to be fulfilled by that debt. What does that mean? Debt should only be consumed when it is coming to fulfill a certain defined purpose, which is predetermined, which is already well laid out, and therefore you have calculated how much debt you actually need to consume for you to actually meet that purpose that will then necessitate for you to take that debt. So don't take up debt without a plan. Take up debt because it is going to fit into something that you have already predetermined. Many people, and unfortunately I see this happening quite a lot with civil servants, where people are given debt because you are a teacher, you're working with the TSC, you are working with the TSC, you are probably a medical practitioner, you have a payslip. So many people, simply because the financial institutions are willing to advance debt because of the goodwill of the employer, many people consume debt simply because the lenders know you will actually be a good payer based on the goodwill of your employer. So please don't consume debt because of its availability. Consume debt because there's a plan that debt is actually coming to fulfill and fill. The next thing is that debt that you consume must actually be for development purposes or investment purposes. Remember, debt is not money that you have. Debt is money that you have purchased. And the price you pay for the money that you have purchased is actually the interest you pay on debt. So it's not free money. So it must go into a course, into a venture, into an opportunity that is actually able to repay back that debt, that is actually growing that debt. So you must be able to check very clearly that the purpose for which this debt is being consumed, it is for investment or development. Do not consume debt for lifestyle, for keeping up with your lifestyle. You saw your friend driving a new car, there you are buying a new car on debt. You saw your friend wearing expensive clothes, there you are consuming debt to basically go and upgrade your wardrobe. That's a wrong reason for you to consume debt. Consume debt only because it meets a purpose of investment or development. The third aspect that you need to be able to look at is that debt must be able to repay itself. Any debt that you consume must be going into a plan that is either development or investment oriented, and that plan must actually be able to repay this debt. What do I mean when I say that? If, for example, you took up a loan or a mortgage to purchase a house that you will probably want to put out there to let or for rental purposes, and probably this mortgage you are paying a monthly mortgage repayment, loan repayment of 100,000, and this mortgage facility, this house rather, is actually fetching a rental income of only about 70,000. That means that loan is not able to sustain itself. It then means that you have to go back to your pocket and finance your credit from other means out of what you have not borrowed for. So it must be important that each and every credit that you take up must be able to pay itself end to end. You must not be forced to go back to your pocket to actually refinance and borrow to also now repay a loan that you're also already paying. The fourth aspect that is important is that before you take up any credit, kindly window shop for the lowest interest rate available, for the cheapest cost. It's unfortunate that very many of us do not window shop when we are taking up credit. When you're buying a car, you walk into 3, 4, 5 motor vehicle yards. When you're looking for a house, you go and view 3, 4, 5 houses either for rental or for purchase. Why is it that when you're taking up credit, the person who comes to you and tells you will give you a loan at the quickest means is the person that you go with? That is lack of financial wisdom. You need to be able to actually window shop around and see who is giving me credit at the cheapest rate, who is selling to me credit, because in essence, credit or loan is money that you buy. Who is selling you this money at the lowest cost? And that means that then that money will be able to give you the best value. We've seen around all kinds of opportunities to borrow. Shylocks, crazy interest rates of up to 30%. Some of the microfinance institutions charging about 7% a month. That is a whooping 84% per annum. If you take up that credit, what legal business can you do to be able to actually pay back that money? So you have to interrogate the cost of debt before you consume it. The next thing that you must be able to look at is the ability for that credit to actually give you peace of mind. There is credit that you consume, and that from the word go, that credit becomes a bother to your ability to work normally. You must look up for credit that doesn't pressure you when it's coming to when time for payment comes. Because when you do not have the peace of mind to work, then it means that you will not even have the peace of mind to make the money to repay back that loan. And what that subsequently will mean is that then your ability to actually pay back that loan is inhibited. It is challenged. It will be difficult for you to actually repay back that loan. So you must be very keen that the method that you use, or the provider that you use to give you credit, they must be people who will not harass you, who will not intimidate you, who will not come up to take your collateral simply because you are 5, 6, 10 days late into the purchasing or into the to the paying back of your debt. The fifth thing that you need to look at is that who are you borrowing from? Who are you borrowing from? Kindly do not borrow money from everybody. Do not borrow money from every institution. Better still is when you are in a position to actually take money from institutions rather than individuals. Why? Individuals at times, or organizations or institutions are at times easier and better to deal with, because at times an individual that you borrow money from, therein lies a chance of actually losing a relationship should you have a delay, or should you not be able to pay that loan either totally or temporarily within the stipulated period of time. So it is important that you ask yourself, as you move into consuming debt, does that debt also jeopardize the relationship that you have with that person? Because if I borrowed from a sibling, if I borrowed from a relative, if I borrowed from somebody whom I'm very close to, then it makes it that if I am not able to pay that money in time, then their perception and their outlook of me then changes. And therefore, that relationship will never be the same again. Therefore, practice a bit of prudence and wisdom when borrowing money. Do not borrow money from everybody. At times, it's important that you say, I need money now, but then this money must not be borrowed today because I can wait until some time later and basically be able to do that which I will need, because I can be able to raise that money with another means other than borrowing money from people who are very close to me. The other aspect that you need to be able to look at is you must be able to account for each and every shilling, each and every dime that you actually spend of the credit that you took up. Many times, unfortunately, we take up credit and it ends up going into things that do not necessarily fit into what we were meant to use this money for. You borrowed this money to probably finish off purchasing a property. You ended up using this money for medical bills. You ended up using this money to help a friend. You ended up taking this money, using this money to do other things that were not the core of you taking up that credit. So we must be able to ask ourselves this great day, that did I account for each and every shilling, each and every coin that I actually took up, and did it go into the purpose for which that money was actually intended to do? The sixth thing that you need to consider very wisely when as you consume credit is that you must always pay the most expensive credit first. What does that mean? Let's say, for example, you have credit, or you have a loan that you are financing, or you're paying back from lender A, who is charging you 25% per annum. You have this other loan that you are paying 15% per annum, and you have this other loan that you are paying 10% per annum. The interest or your focus must always be to pay the credit that is most expensive at 25%. Because remember, the amount of money that interest that you're paying is more than double when you look at when you look at the loan that you are actually paying at 10%. So if you look at 10% versus 25%, you are paying 1.5 times more than what you should be paying. So the interest must always be to reduce the payment of the most expensive credit first, moving into the lowest interest accruing loan, because then that means you are actually avoiding to pay extra debt in terms of interest that accrues from the more expensive credit. So there's a lot that needs for us to discuss around credit and debt management. And the key for us to realize is, even before you consume debt, ask yourself, must I consume it? Must I take up this loan? Must I take up this credit from somebody? Must I borrow, or is it something that can wait? One of the Japanese system of saving money is actually delayed purchases. So they have this interesting method that they use, that if you want to purchase something, always give yourself a 24 to a 48-hour window before making the decision to purchase. Now, what that does is that within that period of time, the excitement that came with the value, or with the value that was perceived in my mind of what I needed to spend my money on, will generally or basically be eroded based on the value that thing brings to me. So if it is something that is very important, then that means today, if I saw it today and tomorrow the excitement, the level of attachment to purchase that which I've seen is still up there, then they will make the decision that that thing is important, therefore I'll purchase it. If within 48 hours, then the excitement, the need, the attachment to purchase that thing is not there, then that means that that thing was not necessarily very important. So it is important that even for you and I, before we go into consuming debt, we should always ask ourselves, is this thing that I'm going to put my money into, is this thing that I'm going to consume for debt important, or is it something that can wait and therefore gives me an opportunity to actually do savings and purchase it on cash? Or is it something that demands for me then to take up a loan or consume credit, and therefore subsequently be paying for that credit over a certain period of time? Lastly is that you must always consider the time of credit. Yeah? Please, wherever somebody comes sell to you a loan, don't be very fast to sign there. Read. What's the kind of interest that accrues on that loan facility? Understand. Be wise. Read through. Do not be tied by small things that are actually emanating from ignorance. And it's ignorance simply because you never read to understand the terms and conditions of the credit that you purchased. We'll finish this discussion. It's just to remind us that the availability of credit is not a call to the consumption of credit. Thank you.